The story I'm about to tell you occurred when I was a boy, about 8 years old. I was at my best friend Jack's house, and it was my first time having a sleepover. We hung out and played some football during the day, and then we played video games at night until it was time for bed. Jack slept in his bed, and I slept in my sleeping bag that was at the other end of the room. All of the lights got turned off at about 11, and I tried to go to sleep. Jack seemed to fall asleep pretty fast because I could hear him snoring, but I just laid there awake. I was only used to sleeping in my own bed, and being away from home for the first time, I just couldn't get comfortable in the same way. I laid there and closed my eyes for what felt like a really long time. The room was pitch black aside from a little green light coming from Jack's Xbox. My eyes adjusted to the dark, but I could still only see the basic shapes of things around the room. After closing my eyes for a while longer, I was still unable to sleep, so I opened them and started to look around the room once again. It was still very dark, but when I looked in front of the doorway, which was open, I saw what looked like the outline of a man standing in the room. I told myself that I was just imagining things. I could barely see it, and I kinda had to squint in order to do so. The man appeared to be just standing there in the front of the room. I was starting to feel scared, so I buried my head into my pillow and shut my eyes. I refused to open them until I fell asleep, because I was sure it was my imagination of the man being in the room, and I just wanted to get some rest. Eventually, I did fall asleep, I would guess about 20 minutes later. When I woke up the next morning, I had forgotten all about it, and I saw that Jack had just woken up as well. We got up, and then he said to me that he had a crazy dream last night. I asked him what it was. Then he told me he had a dream that a man came into his room at night. When he said this, I immediately remembered and got the creeps. I told him that I thought I saw a man in the room when I was trying to fall asleep. We both looked at each other in disbelief. We quickly ran downstairs where his parents were to feel safer, but when we did, we noticed the window in the hallway was wide open. Jack asked his mother if she had opened the window, and she said no. I went back home shortly after that. I'm not sure if Jack ever told his parents about a man being in his bedroom or not. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, I had a pretty large friend group. I was an easygoing kid who could be friends with just about anyone. Because of this, I got invited to many birthday parties. The one that stands out the most, though, is a sleepover birthday party that my friend Ben had for his 7th birthday. There was probably 8 to 10 of us total. It was a pretty big party. I didn't really know Ben all that well, but I was still excited to be at his birthday party. I even remember that I got him one of those little basketball hoops that you put on your door with the little soft basketballs. Anyways, we all had pizza, cake, and then Ben opened his presents. After that, we played some games out in his yard. One of those games that we played was hide and go seek. I really liked this game because I was usually really good at it. When it was time to hide, all the kids scattered around the yard. Ben's yard was kind of big. He had a chain link fence going around it, but his house was on the corner, so there was 2 areas near the road. I ran to the back corner to hide behind a tree that was next to the fence. I stood there and tried to listen carefully to see if anybody was coming. After about 5 minutes of standing there, I heard a man's voice behind me. It startled me, and I turned around and saw a man that appeared to be around 60 years old, standing on the other side of the fence smiling at me. He said hi and asked me what I was doing. I assumed he was a neighbor, and I told him we were playing hide and go seek. Then he asked me if I lived there. I told him no, I was just sleeping over for Ben's birthday party. Then the man walked away. I ended up winning hide and go seek, which I was pretty excited about. After that, it got dark and we all went inside. We watched a movie and then we were told to go to bed by Ben's parents. Because there were so many of us, half of us kids slept in Ben's room and the other half had to sleep in the living room. I slept in the living room with 4 other kids. I got a good spot, which was next to the window, because I didn't want to be in the middle of the floor. When the lights went out, I fell asleep pretty quickly, but I woke up in the night to hear a familiar voice whispering at me. I was very confused at first, then I looked around. I saw the man from earlier standing at the window above me, looking directly at me. He was smiling and then put his finger over his lips to be quiet. Then he whispered hello to me and motioned for me to come closer to him. He said he didn't get to finish talking to me because of our game, so he came back. Then he asked me if I wanted to come with him. I wish I would have ran away, but I just kind of stood there not knowing what to do. Then he put his arm on my shoulder and started to guide me out the window. I didn't like this at all, and I asked the man what he was doing. He told me to be quiet, but I really didn't like this, so I told him no. Another boy who was sleeping woke up and asked what we were doing. The man then tried grabbing me and taking me with him, but I resisted, and he bumped into the side of the window, making a loud noise. That was enough to wake up the rest of the boys in the living room, and then the man let go of me and ran away. Some of the boys asked what was going on, and I explained. After that, they said they should tell Ben's parents. Eventually, we did, and I didn't realize just how serious it was. The next day, the police came, and everybody had to go home early. It turns out the man didn't even live in the neighborhood, and nobody knew who he was. When I was about 12 years old, me and my friend would occasionally sleep over at each other's houses. One time when I was staying over at his place for a night, we went to bed at about 2 in the morning. My friend's parents and sister were long asleep by this time. We had stayed up pretty late playing Call of Duty and were finally sleepy. My friend had a bunk bed, even though he had the whole bedroom to himself, so I took the bottom bunk and he took the top. After we shut off the Xbox, we fell asleep pretty fast. I remember that I woke up though at 4 in the morning. When I woke up, I was wide awake. I didn't know why I had woken up, because I usually slept all the way through the night. I realized that I really had to pee, so I went down the hall to use my friend's bathroom. But as soon as I opened his bedroom door and walked out of the room, I saw something strange. His attic door was open and the ladder was hanging halfway down. As far as I knew, his family never really used the attic, and I hadn't heard anyone in the hall before we went to bed. I figured it was someone in his family, but it just seemed odd to me. I went into the bathroom and used it. When I was done, I walked back out into the hallway, but the attic door was now completely shut. This really gave me the creeps. I hadn't heard any noises, and I knew I wasn't imagining things. I debated waking up my friend, but I decided not to, and I went back to sleep. The next morning, I told my friend all about what I had seen. When I did, his eyes got big, and his face got real serious. He said that he had been hearing noises up there at night, but he figured it was nothing but maybe squirrels, and he said when he told his parents, they assured him that it was nothing. We decided to tell his father when we went downstairs, because luckily it was a Saturday and he didn't have to go to work. When we did, he made a joke about us being afraid of animals, but when we told him about the door being open, he got a little more serious. He went up to go take a look. He poked his head up for about 10 seconds and then came back down. When he came back down, he said that there was a man up there and that we should call the police. That is exactly what we did, and about 15 minutes later, they showed up and arrested the man. He looked really dirty, and they found that he had been most likely living in the attic for around a week. This happened just last month. My childhood best friend moved about 3 hours away recently. We go to different high schools now, but during the summer I went up to visit him at his new place for a weekend. I stayed over for 2 nights, and we mostly played around in his yard, which was pretty big, and played video games inside. He has a really nice walkout basement with a huge TV in it, and it's pretty much all to himself. On the second night, we were playing each other in Madden, and it went late into the night. His parents were away, and so we lost track of time and found ourselves still playing at nearly 3 in the morning. We weren't even tired and were in the middle of another game when out of nowhere we heard a knocking on his sliding door. It was pitch black outside and we had a couple lights on, so we really couldn't see. His nearest neighbor though lived pretty far away and we weren't being loud or anything, so we didn't know why anybody would knock at this hour. My friend had been texting with his parents a couple hours earlier, so we knew it wasn't them. Then we heard the knocking again. My friend paused his game and looked. From the angle that we were at, we were unsure if whoever it was could see us or not, because the couch was kind of facing away from the door. We decided not to answer it and hoped whoever it was would go away. The knocking stopped, but then they tried opening the door, which thankfully was locked. We saw the person walk away after that, but not even 10 seconds later, they came back. This time they hit the door with their hand. We could see that it was a taller man wearing a hood and his head was down, but couldn't make out much more than that. After that, my friend and I ran upstairs. We shut the door to the upstairs, but it didn't lock, so we ran into a bathroom and locked the door. Then we called the police. A couple of minutes later, we heard the sound of glass breaking in the basement. The police said they were sending somebody out, but we knew it wouldn't be about 10 minutes before they arrived because of where my friend lived. We waited silently in the bathroom to hear if the man was going to come upstairs or not. Eventually, the upstairs door opened. We heard the man walking to the living room. Then he approached the bathroom we were hiding in. We held our mouths to cover our breathing. It felt like he stopped in front of the door for a whole minute. Then he slowly turned the knob until it stopped from being locked, and then he walked away. About 10 seconds later, we heard the sirens. We waited until the police were pounding on the door. They were able to make it inside and arrest the man. My friend and I felt very lucky to be safe that night.